The metal was cold against my temple. My stepdad's hand didn't shake, his finger curled tight on the trigger. The papers lay flat on the table, the pen already uncapped. "Sign them," he growled, spittle hitting the page. "Or else." Across the room, my brother leaned against the doorframe, blocking any hope of escape. His arms were crossed, a smug grin twisting his face. He wasn't scared. He wasn't horrified. He was waiting. My mother? She sat at the head of the table, her lips pressed thin, her eyes dead. She didn't speak. She didn't move. He just watched. The weight of betrayal crushed harder than the barrel at my head. If you're watching this, drop a comment, hit like and subscribe, because this is the story of how my stepdad tried to force me into surrender, and how justice walked in seconds later. My name is Claire. I'm 29 years old. And on the night my stepdad shoved a gun against my skull, I realized my entire family had been conspiring against me for years. The papers weren't random. They were the deed to my late father's company. The one thing he left me after a lifetime of working himself to the bone. A construction firm built from sweat and calloused hands, worth millions today. And my stepdad wanted it. 4 months, he'd been circling like a vulture, convincing my mother that business should be in a man's hands. My brother, lazy, entitled, ate up every word, convinced he'd be handed power just for existing. I ignored the whispers. I thought they couldn't touch me. Dad's will had been ironclad. The company was mine. But then the harassment started. "Sign it over, Claire. It's too much responsibility for you. Be smart, let us handle it." I refused. And again. Until refusal became defiance. And defiance became a target on my back. That night they invited me to family dinner. I should have known it was a trap. The way my mother's smile never reached her eyes. The way my brother locked the door behind me. And then the slam of metal on wood, the gun pulled from my stepdad's jacket. "Sign," he hissed, "or you won't leave this table alive." The air was thick with silence. My heart pounded in my ears, but my voice didn't shake. Because I already knew something they didn't. And as I lifted my eyes to meet his, I whispered, "Watch this." I said, and tilted my phone just enough for him to see the red dot pulsing. "Smile for the cloud, Gerald. You're live." His eyes flicked to the lens, then back to me. "Turn it off." "Can't," I replied. "Auto backup. Off-site." A hard knock rattled the door. My brother jerked, hand still on the knob. Another hammering fist. "Police. Open up." Gerald's jaw slackened. The gun wobbled. Mom finally whispered, "What did you do?" I kept my gaze on the barrel. "I sent Elena the invite." "Elena who?" Gerald hissed. "Our counsel," I said softly. "She filed an emergency TRO this afternoon. No contact, no intimidation, no interference with the company. If I didn't text a green check by 8:05, she called Detective Ruiz and sent him a link to this room's camera." "Camera?" My brother scoffed, but his stare drifted upward. I didn't have to point. The pendant light glinted, new last week. Microlens inside, streaming to the cloud, to my lawyer, to the board. Another slam. "Police. Open the door." My brother fumbled the lock. The door swung and 2 officers pushed in, vests high, hands out. "Sir, drop the weapon." "Now." Gerald's bluster cracked. "This is a misunderstanding." "Drop it." He set the gun down. Slow, reluctant. A cop kicked it back, cleared it, racked the slide. A live round pinged across the floor and rolled beneath the baseboard. Mom flinched. "Gerald." The nearest officer holstered and faced me. "Ma'am, are you safe?" I nodded once. "Recording is continuous. Off-site backups." "Hands where we can see them," the second officer barked. My brother raised his palms, cheeks blotched with panic. The first officer read, "Gerald Paxton, you're detained pending investigation of assault with a deadly weapon, criminal threats, and violation of a court order." Gerald thrashed. "That order isn't real." "It's stamped," I said. "Judge Keating, 3:42 p.m. You were served by email at 4:01 and by courier at 6:12. You signed for it." His mouth opened and closed like a fish. "The courier receipt was in my bag. I didn't need it. The officers had it already. Elena would have made sure." "Ma'am," the first officer asked, "any other weapons in the home?" "Hall closet," I answered. "Gun case." He keeps a second mag in the toolbox under the sink. They moved fast, one clearing, one cuffing. Steel clicked at Gerald's wrists. My brother took a step forward on instinct. The second officer snapped back. He froze. Mom finally stood, fingers trembling at her pearls. Claire, you were family. You didn't have to do this. I looked at her, really looked. The woman who taught me to color inside the lines, watching while a gun pressed into my skin. You watched, I said. That's what you did. He swallowed. Said nothing. As they led Gerald past me, he twisted enough to spit his last threat. You think this is over? You can't run that company. You'll burn it down. I let him see my smile. Already ran last quarter, Gerald. While you were counting my signatures, I was counting your shell invoices. His face blanched. The officers steered him through the door. The house exhaled. The barrel-shaped silence collapsed into 100 tiny noises. The tick of the oven, a drip in the sink, my brother's unsteady breath. Claire, he said, voice thin, what do you mean, shell invoices? I picked up the pen he'd slid toward me and clicked it shut. The little sound cut like a metronome. I mean, the audit finishes in the morning. I slid my phone into my pocket, its red dot still pulsing. And when it does, I'm not the one who'll be signing papers. The door slammed behind Gerald and the officers. For a long moment, the only sound in the dining room was the faint tick-tick of the wall clock. My brother finally broke the silence. You set him up, he whispered, his face pale. I tilted my head. No. He set himself up. I just gave him the stage and hit record. His fists clenched at his sides. Do you realize what you've done to Mom? To us. I laughed bitterly. Done to you? He pressed a gun to my head in front of you. And you, what did you do? You blocked the door. You were his muscle. Don't you dare talk to me about damage. Mom flinched at my words, but her eyes never met mine. She just stared at the empty chair where Gerald had been sitting, like she was still waiting for him to come back. I leaned across the table, tapping the unsigned papers. You wanted me to sign over Dad's company. That was the whole point, right? The plan. My brother's silence was answer enough. Here's the thing, I continued, voice steady now. I already knew. Gerald's been funneling money through fake subcontractors. Inflated invoices. Work that never existed. You thought I'd sign away the company and give him the keys to bury it all. But the auditors finish tomorrow. And when they do, every dime he stole will surface. His face drained of color. You can't prove. Can't I? I slid my phone across the table. On the screen was a neat stack of PDF files, receipts, bank transfers. His name and Gerald's side by side on every transaction. His mouth opened and closed. How did you? I looked, I said simply. Unlike you, I actually know how the company works. Mom finally spoke, her voice low and desperate. Claire, please. You can't drag this family through court. Think of the scandal. Think of what people will say. I stared at her. People didn't put a gun to my head. People didn't steal from Dad's legacy. That was Gerald. That was your son. That was you when you chose silence. Her lips trembled, but she didn't argue. I stood, gathering the papers into a crisp stack and tucking them under my arm. Tomorrow morning the board meets. The audit results go public. And when they do, you'll both realize something. My brother swallowed hard. What? That I don't need a gun or threats or silence to win. I only need the truth. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my condo, the stack of forged documents on the coffee table, my laptop glowing with spreadsheets and audit notes. Every transaction was like a bruise, proof of how far Gerald and my brother had gone. By morning, I walked into the company's boardroom armed with evidence. The men around the table looked up as I entered. Half of them had known me since I was a child, trailing after Dad in steel-toed boots. Some still doubted me. Some thought I was too emotional to run Donovan Construction. Today that ended. I dropped the folder in the center. Before we begin, you need to see this. Whispers rose as they flipped through the papers. Gerald's signature. My brother's initials. Phantom subcontractors build hundreds of thousands for projects that never happened. This isn't speculation, I said, projecting the files on the screen. It's theft. Coordinated, deliberate, and traceable. The auditors confirmed everything this morning. One board member, silver-haired and skeptical, frowned. Are you saying your stepfather and brother attempted to defraud this company? I met his gaze without flinching. Not attempted. They succeeded. Until now. Murmurs erupted. One man cursed under his breath. Another shook his head, disbelief written all over him. I raised my voice. And last night Gerald escalated further. He tried to force me to sign ownership papers at gunpoint. Gasps. Eyes widened. The chairman, a friend of my late father, leaned forward. Do you have proof? I tapped my phone. Video, audio, police report, restraining order. All filed. Officers Ruiz and Mason witnessed his arrest. The room went silent. The truth was no longer deniable. I placed both hands on the table. You may have doubted me before. You may have thought I was just the daughter clinging to her father's company. But this, I pointed at the evidence, is why he left it to me. Because he knew I'd protect it. Even if it meant standing against my own family. The chairman nodded slowly. Then you have our support. Effective immediately, Gerald is removed from all advisory roles, and your brother's accounts are frozen. We'll pursue criminal charges. A weight lifted from my chest. For the first time since Dad's funeral, I felt seen, respected. But even as the board voted in my favor, I knew this battle wasn't over. Gerald was behind bars, but men like him didn't go quietly. And Mom, she still hadn't chosen a side. That evening, I returned to my condo to find a message waiting. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice wasn't. Claire, Mom's tone cracked through the voicemail. You've humiliated us. Gerald's in custody, your brother can't access his accounts, and the whole neighborhood is whispering. Is this really what you wanted? To destroy your family? I listened twice. Each time, her words stabbed in the same place. Not regret for the gun pressed to my head, not horror at Gerald's crimes, not even shock at my brother's role. Just embarrassment. Just appearances. I deleted the message. Later that night, Emily, my cousin, showed up at my door. She'd always been the only relative who believed in me, the only one who told me Dad was right to leave the company in my hands. She looked exhausted but determined. They're panicking, she said without sitting down. Your mom's trying to call board members saying you staged everything. Your brother's telling anyone who'll listen that you forged the invoices yourself. I snorted. Let him. The files are time-stamped. The transfers went straight to his account. Emily nodded. I know. But they're not going down without dragging you through the mud first. Her words didn't scare me anymore. They fueled me. Good. Let them try. I've got truth on my side. Still, when I lay down that night, an ache gnawed at me. Somewhere deep inside, I'd hoped Mom would pick me. That she'd look at everything Gerald had done and finally say enough. Instead, she doubled down on her silence. Silence that had almost gotten me killed. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. The thought ringing louder than sleep. If she won't choose me now, she never will. The next morning my phone buzzed again. This time a text from Dad's oldest partner, Mr. Hayes. Board vote finalized. You're confirmed as sole CEO. Press conference tomorrow. Be ready. My throat tightened. Not the girl trying to hold it together. Not the daughter filling a chair until a man could take over. I whispered into the quiet. We did it, Dad. But victory carried its own shadow. Gerald still had allies. My brother still had resentment burning in his veins. And Mom had venom left unspent. Tomorrow I'd face the cameras. And when I did, I'd have to decide if I was ready to tell the world the whole story. The morning of the press conference, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of my navy blazer. Dad's cufflinks glinted at my wrists. His old pair, the ones he wore to every contract signing. My hands trembled as I fastened them. Breathe, I whispered to my reflection. You've already survived worse. In the lobby of Donovan Construction, reporters buzzed like hornets, cameras flashing as soon as I stepped onto the stage. Behind me sat the board, solemn, united. For once, the weight of doubt wasn't pressing down on my shoulders. It was gone. I gripped the podium. Good morning. My name is Claire Donovan. I stand before you not just as the daughter of this company's founder, but as its rightful CEO. The crowd hushed. 4 months, Donovan Construction has been under quiet audit. What we found was devastating. millions siphoned through shell companies, fake invoices, theft that threatened the foundation of everything my father built. Gasps echoed. Flashes blinded. And when confronted with exposure, my stepfather and brother attempted to coerce me into signing the company away, at gunpoint. A ripple tore through the room. Hands shot up, voices overlapping. At gunpoint. Are charges filed? I raised a hand. Yes. Gerald Paxton is in custody. My brother is under investigation. And let this be clear. This company belongs to no one's greed. It belongs to the legacy of my father, and to every worker who shows up on our job sites, rain or shine. The applause began hesitant, then swelled until the sound shook the hall. I stood straighter, my father's cufflinks warm against my skin. Afterward, as the board ushered reporters out, Mr. Hayes clapped me on the shoulder. You did him proud today. I nodded, throat tight. But the moment I stepped into the hallway, Mom was there. No pearls this time, no rehearsed smile. Just raw fury in her eyes. You embarrassed us, she hissed. You embarrassed me. I met her gaze. No, Mom. You embarrassed yourself when you let Gerald put a gun to my head and said nothing. Her face paled. You had a choice, I continued, my voice steady now. You could have protected me. You could have spoken. Instead you sat in silence. That silence cost you a daughter. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't. The security guard shifted closer. Mom's hand dropped. For once she had no words. As I walked past her, the cameras still clicking in the lobby, I realized this truth. Gerald might rot in prison, my brother might crawl through court hearings, but Mom? She'd already sentenced herself. And I wasn't carrying her chains anymore. The weeks after the press conference blurred into a storm of headlines and court dates. Stepfather charged in armed coercion plot. Donovan heiress exposes family fraud. New CEO vows to protect father's legacy. Every paper, every news channel carried my name. Some praised me. Some tried to paint me as the cold daughter who turned on her family. But the truth was out there and nothing could erase it. One evening I stayed late at the office, combing through files. I was determined to clean every trace of Gerald's rot from the company. As I shut my laptop, I noticed a figure in the doorway. It was my brother. No guards, no threats, just him. His face looked older, worn, stripped of arrogance. What do you want? I asked, bracing. He shoved his hands in his pockets. To talk. Not like before. I waited. I didn't think he'd actually pull the gun, he admitted, eyes darting away. I thought it was just scare tactics. I didn't realize how far he'd go. I let out a bitter laugh. You blocked the door, Daniel. You were part of it. He winced. I know. And I can't take it back. But I didn't want it to end like that. I was stupid. Greedy. I thought Gerald would finally see me as worth something. His words hung in the quiet. For the first time he wasn't sneering. He wasn't mocking. He was just a broken man realizing the depth of his mistakes. I can't fix what I did, he continued. But I needed you to know. I'm sorry. The apology hit harder than I expected. I searched his face for lies, for manipulation. But all I saw was regret. Daniel, I said slowly, sorry doesn't erase the fact that you stood by while I had a gun to my head. He nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. I know. And I'll carry that. I didn't want you thinking I don't care. For a moment, silence stretched between us, filled with everything we'd never said. Finally I exhaled. I don't know if I can forgive you, I admitted. But I hear you. He nodded again, then left, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. I sat there in the quiet boardroom, staring at the city lights outside. Gerald was locked away. My brother was unraveling. My mother was still silent. And me. I was stronger than I had ever been. But there was one last thing I needed to do. Close the chapter once and for all. The last chapter came on a gray morning in October, when I stood alone in the cemetery where my father was buried. The autumn wind carried the smell of wet leaves, tugging at my coat as I set a small bouquet against the stone. Dad, I whispered, it's done. I told him everything, about the gun, the board, the audit, the press conference. How Gerald was behind bars awaiting trial. How Daniel had finally cracked and apologized, though forgiveness wasn't something I could hand out like candy. How Mom still refused to choose me, clinging to her pride like a shield. And then I told him about me. That I'd taken the title he left me. That I'd earned the respect of the board. That the company he built with calloused hands was safe, because his daughter refused to bend, even with a gun at her head. That night, I hosted a dinner at my condo. Just a handful of close friends, people who had become more of a family than the one bound to me by blood. We laughed, we toasted, we celebrated survival. And when someone asked me if I regretted how it all played out, I said the truth. No. Because it showed me exactly who they were, and who I am. The room went quiet for a moment, and then one of my friends said softly, "You didn't just survive them, Claire. You beat them." And for the first time in months, I felt the knot in my chest finally loosen. A week later, Gerald's trial began. I didn't sit in the front row. I didn't even testify that day. But I watched as the evidence rolled out. The video, the invoices, the gun. Justice wasn't a fantasy anymore. It was real, walking in on heavy boots. When the gavel finally came down weeks later, the verdict was exactly what I expected. Guilty. Gerald would spend years behind bars. Daniel's future was tied up in restitution hearings. Mom never showed her face in court. Me. I walked out into the sunlight free. So now I speak directly to you. Have you ever faced betrayal so deep it nearly broke you? Share your story in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more. Because if my story proves anything, it's this. They tried to break me with a gun, but the strongest weapon I had was the truth.